Hello students, today we are doing a chapter from our English textbook, First Flight, Chapter 7, Glimpses of India. Part 1, A Baker from Goa. Part 2, Kurg. Part 3, Tea from Assam. A Baker from Goa is a pen portrait of a traditional Goan village baker who still has an important place in the society. What do you mean by pen portrait? Pen portrait is a soft description of the people, of the locality, of the area in literature, in words. So, a poder is a very essential part of any Goan village. No Goan village is active without the honking of the poder. When a poder comes to the village, he comes on his bicycle or either walking. He carries a huge basket on his head or on his bicycle which is full of different types of breads, and he'll come honking paw poo paw poo paw poo, and people, they are eagerly waiting for the poder to come, because people here, their day starts with a hot cup of tea and the bread from the poder's basket. So let's start the chapter with the activity given to us before we read. We have to discuss this in class. Of course, we are not in class right now, but what images of people and of places come to your mind when you think of our country? India is a very vast country with great diversity, diverse in the sense of people, places, culture, religion, language. We are a diverse lot. So when we think of India, we think of India as from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, the Kashmiris to the Keralites, from north to south, from east in the Assam to west in the Gujarat. Such a large extent we have of people. What parts of India have you lived in or visited? Can you name some popular tourist destinations? You may know that apart from the British, the Dutch and the French, the Portuguese have also played a part in the history of our country. Can you say which parts of India show French and Portuguese influence? Can you say which parts of India grow tea, coffee? Let's start the chapter from part 1, A Baker from Goa. This is a pen portrait of a traditional Goan village baker who still has an important place in his society. Our elders are often heard reminiscing nostalgically about those good old Portuguese days. The Portuguese and the famous loaves of bread. Those eaters of loaves might have vanished, but the makers are still there. We still have amongst us the mixers, the molders, and those who bake the loaves. Those age-old time-tested furnaces still exist. The fire in the furnace has not yet been extinguished. The thud and the jingle of the traditional baker's bamboo, heralding his arrival in the morning, can still be heard in some places. Maybe the father is not alive, but the son still carries on the family profession. These bakers are even today known as Pader in Goa. During our childhood in Goa, the baker used to be our friend, companion, and guide. He used to come at least twice a day, once when he set out in the morning on his selling round, and then again when he returned after emptying his huge basket. The jingling thud of his bamboo woke us up from sleep, and we ran to meet and greet him. Why was it so? Was it for the love of a loaf? Not at all. The loaves were bought by some Pashkin or Bastin, the maidservant of the house. What we longed for were those bread bangles, which were chosen carefully sometimes. It was sweet bread of special make. The baker made his musical entry on the scene with a jang jang sound and his specially made bamboo staff. One hand supported the basket on his head, and the other banged the bamboo on the ground. He would greet the lady of the house with good morning and then place his basket on the vertical bamboo. We kids would be pushed aside with a mild rebuke, and the loaves would be delivered to the servant. But we would not give up. We would climb a bench on the parapet and peep into the basket somehow. I can still recall the typical fragrance of those loaves for the elders and the bangles for the children. Then we did not even care to brush our teeth or wash our mouth properly. And why should we? Who would take the trouble of plucking the mango leaf for the toothbrush? And why was it necessary at all? The tiger never brushes his teeth. Hot tea could wash and clean up everything so nicely, after all. Here, a baker from Goa by Lucio Rodriguez. A typical scene from any Goan village, though a little changes are there since being from Goa, visiting Goa every year. There are little changes from what is written in the textbook. The poder or the pader, as it's mentioned here, does come even today in the morning and in the evening hours. But now the way he sells his breads is a bit different than what he used to do earlier. He comes on his bicycle, he has a huge basket, and he has a special type of a horn. We have seen those horns earlier on the buses and on the trucks. The truck driver, the bus driver used to press the horn, and that bhopu sound used to come. The similar bhopu horn is now being used by the poder. He comes and starts playing his horn, and people come out of their house to buy his bread. Yeah, the Portuguese tradition is still continued in Goa in many a way. The Goan carnival, the traditional Goan churches, the culture in Goa, the various food items made by the Portuguese, they are still continued in Goa. Though the Portuguese have left India long time back, but the tradition is continued from father to son. Marriage gifts are meaningless without the sweet bread known as bowl, just as a party or a feast loses its charm without bread. Not enough can be said to show how important a baker can be for a village. The lady of the house must prepare sandwiches on the occasion of a daughter's engagement. Cakes and bolinas are a must for engagement. Cakes and bolinas are a must for Christmas as well as other festivals. Thus, the presence of the baker and the baker's furnace in the village is absolutely essential. The baker or bread seller of those days had a peculiar dress known as the kabi, the kabai. It was a single piece long frock reaching down to the knees. In our childhood, we saw bakers wearing a shirt and trousers which were shorter than full length ones, and longer than half pants. Even today, anyone who wears a half pant which reaches just below the knees invites the comment that he is dressed like a pader. The baker usually collected his bills at the end of the month. Monthly accounts used to be recorded on some wall in pencil. Baking was indeed a profitable profession in the old days. The baker and his family never starved. He, his family, and his servants always looked happy and prosperous. Their plump physique was an open testimony to this. Even today, any person with a jackfruit like physical appearance is easily compared to a baker. So, how important a baker for a Goan can be gauged by the activities or the importance of a baker in the life of a Goan. It is said here that marriage gifts are meaningless without the sweet bread, which is known as bol, B-O-L, bol. So bowls are important for wedding ceremonies, and sandwiches is a must. Sandwiches of various type. It might be chicken sandwich, or some sort of a meat is put in that, fish is put in that, or it may be veg sandwich. Sandwiches are a must in a Goan party. If you go for a party, and which there are many such parties, even for small occasion, when they have a particular prayer ceremony called as litany. During the litany, the children of the village, they all assemble at a house where Mother Mary's statue is venerated. People stand in huge numbers and say the litany. Litany actually is a Latin prayer. The Konkani people, they may not understand what they are saying, but they will sing the litany in such a beautiful way that one is awestruck, one is mesmerized, and one stands to listen to what they are saying. And then soft drinks are offered, and especially for the children, sweets and sandwiches and a lot of things to eat. It's like a celebration. And not only for that, for birthday celebration of children, for any small family get together, bread is an essential part in a Goan family. Those who are familiar, or those who go for holidays to Goa, they will hear comments such as, "Hey Pader, Yore," or "Come here." Yore means come. So Pader is the baker. Even if he's not a baker, just because he's wearing Bermudas, a sort of a Bermuda reaching below his knee, that person is referred to as a Pader. A person who's got a portly belly, a nice and bloated belly, is referred to as a baker, because in those days the baker was well fed. His servants, his workers, everybody who worked in the bakery were well fed. So anybody who has a big paunch, a big stomach, is referred to a baker in Goa. So this is about Goa. Now let's move to the next part of the country, to Coorg. But before we move to Coorg, let's see this comparison. A beautiful comparison is made on page number, which page number is it? Page number 89. A beautiful comparison, the piece from the text on the leaf below with the other piece on Goan bakers. On the right, what makes the two texts so different? Are the facts the same? Do both writers give you a picture of a baker? See one in the peach color and one in the grey color. The peach color says, "Our elders are often heard reminiscing nostalgically about those good old Portuguese days. The Portuguese and the famous loaves of bread. Those eaters of loaves might have vanished, but the makers are still there. We still have amongst us the mixers, the molders, and those who bake the loaves. Those age old time tested furnaces still exist. The fire in the furnace has not been extinguished. The thud and the jingle of the traditional baker's bamboo, heralding his arrival in the morning, can still be heard in some places. Maybe the father is not alive, but the son still carries on the family profession. So, yes, the author here is talking of the baker. In the peach color portion of the comparison, the author is talking of the baker. And let's see what is written in the grey color. After Goa's liberation, people used to say nostalgically that the Portuguese bread vanished with the poders. But the poders have managed to survive because they have perfected the art of door to door delivery service. The poders pick up the knowledge of bread making from traditions in their family. The leavened own baked bread is a gift of the Portuguese to India, adapted from Nanda Kumar Kamat's The Unsung Lives of Goan Paders. So here also the author Nand Kumar is talking about the pader, that is the baker. So yes, both the texts have some similarities if you compare them. So the texts are different because one text has says that though the bakers have gone, the Portuguese are gone, they have left the machines here, the furnaces, the bakery, the baking system is there. And the other text says that the Portuguese have vanished and with them the bread has vanished. But the paders have continued according to the tradition because the tradition has been passed from family to family, from generation to generation. Now find a travel brochure about a place you have visited. Look at the description in the brochure. Then write your own account, adding details from your own experiences to give the reader a picture of the place rather than an impersonal factual description. Now moving on to Coorg. Coorg is coffee country, famous for its rainforest and spices. So easily we can make out where Coorg is, down south in Karnataka, somewhere in Karnataka. Midway between Mysore and the coastal town of Mangalore sits a piece of heaven that must have drifted from the kingdom of God. So Coorg is so beautiful that the author says that it's a piece of kingdom of God that has drifted from heaven and has come and settled somewhere midway between Mysore and Mangalore. Midway between Mysore and the coastal town of Mangalore sits a piece of heaven that must have drifted from the kingdom of God. This land of rolling hills is inhabited by a proud race of martial men, beautiful women, and wild creatures. Coorg, or Kodagu, the smallest district of Karnataka, is home to evergreen rainforest spices and coffee plantation. Evergreen rainforests cover 30% of this district. During the monsoons, it pours enough to keep many visitors away. The season of joy commences from September and continues till March. The weather is perfect, with some showers thrown in for good measures. The air breathes of invigorating coffee. Coffee estates and colonial bungalows stand tucked under tree canopies in prime corners. The fiercely independent people of Coorg are possibly of Greek or Arabic descent. As one story goes, a part of Alexander's army moved south along the coast and settled here when return became impractical. These people married amongst the locals, and their culture is apparent in the martial tradition. Marriage and religious rites which are distinct from the Hindu mainstream. The theory of Arab origin draws support from the long black coat with an embroidered waist belt worn by the Kodavus, known as Kuppai. It resembles the kufiya worn by the Arabs and the Kurds. Kurgi homes have a tradition of hospitality, and they are more than willing to recount numerous tales of valor related to their sons and fathers. The Kurg regiment is one of the most decorated in the Indian Army, and the first chief of the Indian Army, General Chirappa, was a Kurgi. Even now, Kodavus are the only people in India permitted to carry firearms without a license. The river Kaveri obtains its water from the hills and forest of Kurg. Mahashir, a large freshwater fish, abound in these waters. Kingfishers dive for fish, while squirrels and langurs drop their catch. While squirrels and langurs drop partially eaten fruits from them for the mischief of enjoying the splash and the ripple effect in the clear water. Elephants enjoy being bathed and scrubbed in the river by their mahouts. The most laid back individuals become converts to the life of high energy adventure with river rafting, canoeing, rappelling, rock climbing, and mountain biking. Numerous walking trails in this region are a favorite with trekkers. Birds, bees, and butterflies are there to give you company. Macaws, Malabar squirrels, langurs, and slender lions keep a watchful eye from the tree canopy. I do, however, prefer to step aside for wild elephants. The climb to the Brahmagiri hills brings you into a panoramic view of the entire misty landscape of Kurg. A walk across the rope bridge leads to the 64-acre island of Nirsargama, running into Buddhist monks from India's largest Tibetan settlement at nearby Bailakuppe is a bonus. The monks in red, ochre and yellow robes are amongst the many surprises that wait to be discovered by visitors searching for the heart and soul of India right here in Kurg. So Kurg or Kodagu is the smallest district in Karnataka, but it has evergreen forest and it is known for its coffee plantations and spices like lavang patta, ilaichi, cardamom, cloves, cinnamon, and it has an evergreen forest. In fact, the 30% district is covered with rainforest, and during the monsoon it rains so heavily that it is better that we don't go in the monsoon period. The best time to visit Kurg is from September till March. There is a little shower here and there, but it's bearable and we can visit these places. So the people of Kurg, they are tall, lean, they are believed to be either descendants from Alexander's army or from Greek, or they are from Arabic descent. More so for Arabic descent, because the way they dress, the style of dressing, there is a particular kupiya or the Kodavus or kupiya. What are Kodavus or kupiya? It's a type of a dressing, a type of a bandhan that they tie on their waist. That is called as Kodavus. The Kurgi homes, they are very traditional. They are very hospitable. They welcome guests. They are lazy lot, but when it comes to adventure, there are no other people as adventurous as the Kurgi. So in fact, the one of the most decorated Indian regiment in the Indian Army is the Kurg regiment, and the first army general, General Chirappa, was was a Kurgi. So the Kurgi is a bounty of nature. We'll find different types of fish, many types of birds, insects, and a lot of things. Even elephants are here. So the best place to go if you want to, you are very close to nature and you want to see wildlife, you can visit Coorg between September to March. Tea from Assam is the third part of this chapter. Pranjal, a youngster from Assam, is Rajveer's classmate at school in Delhi. Pranjal's father is the manager of a tea garden in Upper Assam, and Pranjal has invited Rajveer to visit his home during the summer vacations. Chai garam, garam chai, a vendor called out in a high-pitched voice. He came up to the window and asked, "Chai saab?" "Give us 2 cups, Pranjal said. They sipped the steaming hot liquid. Almost everyone in the compartment was drinking tea. "Do you know that over 80 crore cups of tea are drunk every day throughout the world?" Rajveer said. "Phew!" exclaimed Pranjal. "Tea really is very popular." The train pulled out of the station. Pranjal buried his nose in his detective book again. Rajveer too was ardent fan of detective stories, but at the moment was keener on looking at the beautiful scenery. It was green, green everywhere. Rajveer had never seen so much greenery before. Then the soft green paddy fields gave way to tea bushes. It was a magnificent view. Against the backdrop of densely wooded hills, a sea of tea bushes stretched as far as the eye could see. Dwarfing the tiny tea plants were tall, sturdy shade trees, and amidst the orderly rows of bushes, busily moved doll-like figures. In the distance was an ugly building with smoke billowing out of a tall chimney. "Hey, a tea garden!" Rajveer cried excitedly. Pranjal, who had been born and brought up in a plantation, didn't share Rajveer's excitement. "Oh, this is tea country now," he said. "Assam has the largest concentration of plantations in the world. You will see enough gardens to last you a lifetime." "I have been reading as much as I could about tea," Rajveer said. "No one really knows who discovered tea, but there are many legends." "What legends?" "Well, there's the one about the Chinese emperor who always boiled water before drinking it. One day, a few leaves of the twigs burning under the pot fell into the water, giving it a delicious flavor. It is said they were tea leaves." "Tell me another," scoffed Pranjal. "We have an Indian legend too. Bodhidharma, an ancient Buddhist ascetic, cut off his eyelids because he fell asleep during meditation. 10 tea plants grew out of the eyelids. The leaves of these plants, when put in hot water and drunk, banished sleep. Tea was first drunk in China," Rajveer added, "as far back as 2700 BC. In fact, words such as tea, chai, and chini are from Chinese. Tea came to Europe only in the 16th century and was drunk more as medicine than as a beverage." The train clattered into Marani Junction. The boys collected their luggage and pushed their way to the crowded platform. Pranjal's parents were waiting for them. Soon they were driving towards Dehekia Bari, the tea garden managed by Pranjal's father. An hour later, the car veered sharply off the main road. They crossed a cattle bridge and entered Dihaka Bari tea estate. On both sides of the gravel road were acre upon acre of tea bushes, all neatly pruned to the same height. Groups of tea pluckers with bamboo baskets on their backs, wearing plastic aprons, were plucking the newly sprouted leaves. Pranjal's father slowed down to allow a tractor pulling a trailer load of tea leaves to pass. This is the second flush or sprouting period, isn't it, Mr. Barua? Rajveer asked. It lasts from May to July and yields the best tea. You seem to have done your homework before coming, Pranjal's father said in surprise. Yes, Mr. Barua, Rajiv admitted, but I hope to learn much more while I am here. Let's read the following passage about tea. India and tea are so intertwined together that life without the brew is unimaginable. Tea entered our life only in the mid-19th century when the British started plantations in Assam and Darjeeling. In the beginning, though, Indians shunned the drink as they thought it was a poison that led to umpteen diseases. Ironically, tea colonized Britain where it became a part of the social dairy and also led to the establishment of numerous tea houses. Today, scientific research across the world has attempted to establish the beneficial qualities of tea. A fact the Japanese and the Chinese knew anyway from ancient times, attributing it to numerous medicinal properties. Sources: History, Tea Anytime by Ranjit Biswas from Literary Review, The Hindu, October 1st, 2006. Collect information about tea, example, its evolution as a drink, its beneficial qualities. You can consult an encyclopedia or visit internet websites. Then, form groups of 5 and play the following roles. Imagine a meeting of a tea planter, a sales agent, a tea lover, a physician, and a tea shop owner. Each person in the group has to put forward his or her views about tea. You may use the following words and phrases. Okay, that you can do at home if you want to.